And welcome back everybody to another episode of Mixing with Babish. Today we will be using FN Inks mixing system and we will be making a total of 4 Pantone colors today. So make sure that you have your pint size mixing containers and all of your mixing inks that you will be using for your project. So before we start anything, of course, we make sure that we have our kosher gloves, make sure that they are on tight and firm before we touch anything that can be transferred from particle to particle. We don't want any transfers. First, I'm going to unlid my inks and I'm going to zero out my scale. And over to my right is my computer, because currently FN Inks system is only available online. First thing that we're going to start off with is our FN green. This recipe calls for 2.36 grams of the FN green. Not a lot, so we're going to make sure that we clean off our spatula before moving to the next color, which is our FN yellow. This recipe calls for 156.88 grams of the FN yellow. And we're just going to go ahead and put this in the container, make sure that we are measuring the correct amount, and you're going to see me keep looking over to the right. So I'm going to make sure that I am putting in the proper amount of grams, and I clean off my spatula before going over to the next color. And make sure that is spick and span here. And before we go into any details, I want to point out that I'm using the mixing white, not the regular FN white. I'm using the mixing white. And one moment here, I'm going to have my assistant bring me over the regular FN white, just so that we can compare the bottles here. They don't weigh any different, but the markings are different. As you can see, this has blue writing, this has black writing. When you're mixing colors, you want to use mixing white into your recipe, not the regular white. Regular white, no. Mixing white, yes. All right, back to our recipe here. This will call for 313.76 grams of the mixing white. And this is a little thick, so I am going to mix this up pretty good before putting this into the containers here. And you'll notice that you're going to keep seeing a camera that pops over from the right to the left. I am currently taking pictures for Instagram while recording myself, so I requested for someone's assistance. Everyone, say hello to Sam Taylor. He is a local photographer. Anyways, while we are doing that, let's go ahead and get back to this mixing. I'm going to go ahead and carefully put in each of the grams that are necessary for this mixture. And keep looking again over to the right. And hey Sam, there he is. Yep, and let's go ahead and mix everybody together. In this first color that we're mixing, it's very lemony yellow. Don't really know the exact color, but this is why we go for Pantones, and this is Pantone 394, everyone. Now that we've got that mixed, we're going to move on to our next color. Alright, our next color, this will be Pantone 158. First start with our yellow, which this calls for 368.50 grams of yellow FN ink. And just a reminder, everything that we are using today is strictly FN inks, nothing more than FN inks. Now that we're done with that, we'll go ahead over to our next color, which is the FN bright red, which calls for 27.25 grams. In this mixture is the ruby red. This calls for 23.42 grams of the ruby red. They're both very similar. Ruby red is just a little bit of a shade darker. And back to our mixing white container, this calls for 53.83 grams of the mixing white. And now that we have everybody together, let's go ahead and mix this to homogeneous and let everybody get to know each other. This list is Pantone 654. It's kind of like a French blue-ish color for the Jordan fans out there. first, we're going to start with the FN Blue. This calls for 443.44 grams of the FN Blue. And you want to be careful when you're measuring out your colors, because if you put in too much, you don't get the exact shade that you're looking for. If you don't put in enough, you won't get the right shade, which I guess sounds common sense. Next color is the FN Fuchsia. This calls for 10.41 grams of the FN Fuchsia. So put that in there. Next color is the FN Yellow. This is 7.76 grams of that. And we end this off with the mixing white, which was 11.4 grams. Go ahead and mix that up. And as you can see, it's like a pretty blue, like a pretty steel blue. Before we move over to the next color, we want to make sure that we are getting the correct information. So this is Pantone 35.99. We're going to first start with our mixing white, which is 405.03 grams of mixing white, and then we will move over to our next color once we've gotten the exact amount of mixing white that we need here. Clean off the spatulas as usual, because you don't want to have any migration of the wrong colors. So then we are going to go over to the FN Yellow, which is 36.28 grams. As you can see in front of me, I also have the FN Gold, because this mixture calls for both. And this calls for 14.66 grams of the FN Gold. Before moving over to the next color, we're going to clean off the spatulas. And the next color on this recipe calls for 11.68 grams of the bright red from FN Ink. That is clean. The last thing that we need is 5.34 grams of the FN green. And we're going to go ahead and mix this up, and this will get us to a pretty sand tan-like color. And here's a close-up shot of all of the colors. I want to thank you today for taking your time to watch this video. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe.